there is an uncomfortable reality no one in Washington is eager to confront. Every global agreement costs money. Every international commitment carries a price tag. What you're witnessing right now, the movement of factories from Europe to the United States, looks like a victory. It feels like momentum. It sounds like fulfillment of political promises. Conservative media calls it a manufacturing revival. Financial channels display investment charts climbing along the Gulf Coast. Markets are celebrating. Energy stocks are soaring. Defense companies are thriving. Industrial land in Texas has exploded in value. On the surface, it feels like winning. But today, I want to show you using real data, real numbers, and global economic indicators why this moment may become one of the most expensive short-term gains in American history. Not because of what was done, but because of what was dismantled to achieve it. For decades, the United States accepted costs, not theoretical ones, but real economic costs to maintain global leadership. Climate agreements weren't abstract moral statements. They translated into regulations, compliance, and higher production costs across nearly every sector of American industry. The Paris Climate Framework committed the U.S. to cutting emissions roughly in half from mid-2000s levels by 2030. That meant tighter power plant rules, fuel standards for automakers, methane regulations for oil and gas, and massive compliance investments across manufacturing, steel, chemicals, and refining.
American companies paid that price. Meanwhile, China played a completely different game. China's commitment wasn't reduction, it was permission. Permission to increase emissions for another decade. While U.S. firms spent billions retrofitting facilities, China spent those same years building dominance over green supply chains. Today, China produces the majority of the world's solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicle batteries. They didn't just participate in the green transition, they industrialized it. Here's the paradox no one likes to discuss. The more expensive it became to manufacture in the United States and Europe, the stronger China's advantage grew. When energy prices in Europe surged to historic levels, American energy remained cheap. Natural gas prices in the U.S. were a fraction of what European industries were paying for the exact same molecule. Electricity prices in the EU doubled those in the U.S. and exceeded China's by a wide margin. For energy-intensive industries, this isn't an inconvenience. It's existential. Chemical producers, steelmakers, aluminum smelters, these businesses cannot survive when their primary input costs twice as much as their competitors. So factories didn't shut down quietly. They moved. European manufacturing giants began closing facilities at home and expanding operations in the United States. Jobs disappeared from Germany and reappeared in Texas and Louisiana. Energy policy didn't just influence trade, it forced migration. Cheap American gas became the magnet. U.S. liquefied natural gas exports now flow across the Atlantic at unprecedented scale. In just a few years, Europe shifted from Russian dependency to American dependency, paying hundreds of billions in the process. American firms profited. American workers benefited. But this wasn't just commerce. It was leverage. Energy became a geopolitical weapon, and climate agreements were only the first domino.
The withdrawal from dozens of international organizations wasn't budget trimming, it was structural demolition. Scientific bodies, development agencies, health institutions, climate forums, many abandoned in the name of sovereignty and efficiency. On paper, the savings looked attractive. In reality, those institutions were never charity. They were tools. For nearly a century, American power didn't rely solely on military strength. It relied on architecture, the architecture of global governance. Financial systems, trade rules, development banks, security alliances, and international norms were built in ways that quietly reinforced American dominance. The dollar became the center of global trade not by accident but by design. International institutions reinforced its role. Dispute mechanisms favored American legal standards. Global rules flowed through systems the U.S. shaped and controlled. That system didn't make America popular. It made America unavoidable. Now that architecture is cracking, when the United States steps away, the vacuum doesn't remain empty. China is moving into the space America left behind, positioning itself as the champion of climate cooperation, infrastructure investment, and global development. New payment systems bypass the dollar. Trade increasingly settles in local currencies. Central banks diversify reserves. Gold replaces treasuries. Allies hedge their baits. This isn't collapse, it's erosion. Slow, predictable, dangerous. The dollar still dominates global finance, but its share is shrinking. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. And reserve currency status is not a switch. It's a trust system. Once trust weakens, restoring it is nearly impossible. At the same time, alliances are adjusting. European nations expand independent defense capabilities. Longtime partners diversify security relationships. Strategic autonomy becomes the goal, because unpredictability changes calculations. And the final risk is the most serious of all, a world without rules. When treaties lose meaning, power replaces law. Shipping lanes become contested. Trade routes become unstable. Investment retreats. Supply chains fracture. The global order wasn't free, but it was cheaper than chaos. Yes, the short-term gains are real. Factories are coming back. Energy is cheap. Markets are happy. But empires don't disappear because they lose battles. They disappear when they abandon the systems that sustained them. The United States didn't rise by being the lowest cost producer. It rose by building a world where American leadership felt inevitable. That system took generations to build, and it can be dismantled far faster than anyone expects. This moment will be studied, not for the jobs created, but for the influence surrendered. The question isn't whether America gains today. The question is whether the price of today's gains is tomorrow's irrelevance. Watch what happens next. Because history doesn't announce turning points in advance. It reveals them in hindsight.